Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 202 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest on the show today for you. The first time on the show, the wonderful Garrett Buss has joined the show, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Garrett, for joining us. Very excited. This has been a long time coming. Glad to finally have you on the show. We have you on today because we're going to be talking all about the Castlevania franchise today, which is very exciting. It's a series that I feel very close to for a lot of different reasons, not least of which is the recent release of the Dead Cells Return to Castlevania DLC, which is now on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. We've been playing it. It's like the closest thing to a new Castlevania game we've gotten in a very long time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, what we want out of the future of the series, and a lot more in that regard. We also have lots of news we're going to be getting into on the show, lots of news and rumors, including the official death of the Wii U and 3DS eShops. Ash's story in the Pokemon anime has finally come to an end. Two sad stories up top. We got some new Squid Sisters music in Splatoon, and a little something that we'll talk about but not be able to cover in this episode, being an upcoming Zelda Direct. Hope you guys have enjoyed that since it's out by the time you're listening to this. But all that out of the way, how are we doing, gang? How are our past weeks? Are we having a good time?
Has it?
Yeah. 2 thumbs way up.
Hell yeah. Love to hear it. What about you, Patrick? What's going on in your life?
Yeah, I feel kind of confused. Has it been a week since we did this? Oh my gosh. Time flies.
Right. Is it really flying by?
Feels like it. Because I feel
Maybe
like
that means you're old now. Is that because when you get older, it goes by faster, right?
I am old.
Yeah.
And time does go by faster the older you get. It's true.
Yeah, that's true. Every year is shorter.
It's like the Pink Floyd song.
The one that's like, time goes by faster when you're older.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. That's the lyric. Yeah. Nailed it.
How's the game dev going?
Good. I feel good. I want to say this. Why not? I got a couple messages from people after last week saying they want to play test. So again, in about a week, I'll have a version that I would love some playtesting help for. It's not the version I want to like slam out to everybody because it will be unpolished in some ways. So it'd be
a work in progress, not having final polish.
Yeah, but
color me surprised.
But like it would be great to get some feedback on the difficulty and checkpoints and stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm aiming for, as well as
count me in.
So yeah, I know, David. I'm just assuming you're part of it, David.
Yeah, you better pump out a Linux build for my Steam Deck.
I will. There's no doubt.
That. Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing pretty good. I've been kind of going on this like crazy shopping spree on the 3DS eShop. I know I'm going to eventually hack my 3DS. And I'll be able to just download all these games for free. But I was like, you know what? I really just like want to grab a couple that I've always eyed. So I ended up getting an eShop card. I am spending like $85 in the 3DS eShop. But I got a ton of stuff. There's a lot that was like kind of on a fire sale. And I got some last minute themes as well. I got a Hanafuda theme for my 3DS and a Sega Dreamcast theme, which I did not know was a thing.
Wild.
Yeah, so there's like Dreamcast. There's like a Dreamcast theme on my 3DS right now, which is in the background. But yeah, so I've been getting back into the old 3DS. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the games we've been playing. But yeah, anything of note going on with you, Garrett?
Oh yeah, this is the first week since South by Southwest, so Austin has kind of chilled out a little bit. I work for the box office at the Paramount Theater. So South by Southwest was just insanity. It was just super duper long shifts, chaos, like 10 movies a day, just wild. So this week has been super chill. We've just had like one show a night. I've been kind of hanging out, relaxing. This past weekend I'm doing some game dev stuff myself. I'm making a little game.
Oh, nice.
And so nothing super major yet, just doing pixel art, just drawing pixel art for a park ranger, try to make him kind of look like Jack Black. So that's kind of what I've been up to this week,
Did you you didn't happen to catch the Tetris movie, did you? At South by?
No, I worked the Tetris movie. I was working in the box office for that. But
I
didn't
am the
personally watch it.
Tetris movie.
Okay, I have a question for you. Was Alexei
Yes.
Pajitnov or Hank Rogers there? Do you know?
I gotta be honest, I wouldn't recognize them if I don't know those
Wow.
names,
And
unfortunately.
you call yourself the Tetris movie.
That's true. I do.
Well, I did see the Tetris movie over this past week. I probably should have said this earlier. I saw like an advanced screening at an Alamo Draft House in Lakeline, and it was good. I really
Heck
recommend everybody go see that movie. When it's I think it's on Apple TV Plus like this week.
Wow.
But yeah.
Your enthusiasm isn't as high as I thought it might be.
Well, I mean, I was writing my own version of this movie, as eagle-eared listeners of the podcast will know. I was like workshopping a script and I was kind of getting going on. I stopped when I found out this movie was greenlit. So it's definitely like, it's hard for me not to watch it knowing
Critically.
what it could have been, like what I would have done with it. I feel like a lot of the characterization was off. I was expecting a lot more of a bromance movie between like Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris, and Hank Rogers, the guy who like bought the rights and got them for the Game Boy. I will say that, and I know we're going really long on the intro here, but there was one really, really funny scene that I want to spoil for you guys from the Tetris movie. I think it was like unintentionally funny, but basically there's a scene where they take Hank Rogers to Nintendo of America in like Redmond, Washington, and they show him the like prototype for the Game Boy, like at the beginning, and it's like a fully finished Game Boy, obviously, and it's got Super Mario Land on it. And he goes, "Oh, are you guys shipping this with Super Mario Land?" And they're like, "We were planning on it." And he goes, "Is this game written in C?" And they're like, "It is." And he goes, "Give me a second." And he goes, and like goes over to a computer and starts typing. And then he hands them the Game Boy and it has fully finished Tetris on it. Like with the sound effects and graphics and everything. It's like the final version of Tetris with the Game Boy. And I was like, that is not how that works.
It's like a hacker scene in a movie or something.
Yeah, he like turned Super Mario Land into Tetris.
Into Tetris.
Yeah, I was like, I don't
You
think
just put
that's
this
accurate.
cartridge in that I just
Yeah. But overall, it was a fun movie. It's definitely worth seeing. I'm glad it just got made at all, right? Even if I have some personal issues with it, I think most people would really enjoy this film. But
All right. Well, yeah. So last week, speaking of Tetris, we had an episode on the Game Boy, about our favorite Game Boy games and things we want come into NSO. So we got some great discussion over on the Discord. Everybody joined the Discord. But so some shout outs to YouTube comments. Karuseta mentioned, hell yeah, Donkey Kong 94 would be awesome. Also, the various pinball spin-offs, Kirby, Metroid, Pokemon. I don't think we mentioned those. Medium Quality gave a little bit of, our JRPG expert gave a little bit of commentary on my request for the Final Fantasy Legend game, saying Final Fantasy Adventure is the one in the Mono Collection. Final Fantasy Legend Trilogy are technically the Saga games, and they would be a great inclusion on NSO, but Square is not into that kind of stuff. Medium Quality wants to see Perfect Dark for Game Boy Color. It would be weird and cool. I'm not even familiar with that game. And then it feels weird to shout out Matthew, but I'm doing it. Matthew said, "I am here to remind everyone to feel." Thank you.
I didn't know that dead people could make YouTube comments.
Dead to David people. No, I'm just kidding.
We love Matt.
And then Eric Shaw, friend of the show, said, "Not sure if he believes any rumors coming from Nintendo Prime. He has a reputation for making clickbait videos, so good to remember that."
That was in regards to the F-Zero GX.
Though there are some
rumor.
other people saying it too. So, I don't think F-Zero GX specifically. That's
it was like
Nintendo Prime.
the next level rumor, right? That they might have been. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe even GX specifically. I don't know. But anyway, we also got some really touching messages and comments on Facebook. Very personal stuff that, like, I don't know how much we want to go into here, but I want to shout out the people who sent us these notes. And one of them was publicly posted. So Wayne Rose shared a really nice comment about the podcast and being a longtime listener and somebody that they lost, and sharing Nintendo with them, and shared that with us. And also, we got a similar kind of message from a person named Jody. I don't know how much to share here, David. Maybe you had some of these conversations on this. So
I had a little chat with Jody after we got sent this message. But it was Jody sent us a message about their daughter Zozo, who had passed away, and how much she enjoyed playing games, and that it was her birthday on the day. So when they sent us the message, and so we wanted to say happy birthday, Zozo, and we're so sorry, obviously, for your loss, but also it means so much that you would share that with us, and we're really glad that we have been able to be a part of y'all's lives, like during these incredibly transformative experiences, right? And I think Jody had asked a question about just games that make you think of lost loved ones. And I think we actually this is all very serendipitous that we got these messages at this time, because we had already recorded last episode, the Game Boy episode. And I think both Jay and I had stories about, like my grandmama who played a lot of Burger Time, and my uncle who played Tetris on the Game Boy. And so there's definitely a lot of people in our lives that gaming as a medium is something that can really bring people together, and it's often tied with that sense memory of a person, you know what I mean? And it's a really great way to, playing games that that they liked, I feel like is a great way to like reconnect with someone in your life that you've lost, right? And so I was really moved by both of those messages. So thanks to both of you for reaching out and sharing your stories. It really meant a lot.
And real briefly, that does remind me that, just the NES in general, and specific games on it, because I didn't own an NES, but I played a lot at my cousin's house, and one of my cousin who's closest in age to me and closest in proximity growing up, she passed away several years ago, but I think about her when I sometimes like Battletoads and some other specific games remind me of that era. But yeah, it could be like having had the shared experience of playing together, or just knowing like what they were into can be that really connect, it's just, I love video games, man. I'm so glad we've done 200 episodes of a podcast about it. So thank you to everyone who made a comment and reached out, especially Wayne, Jody, we really do appreciate that. So if you're listening, definitely send us a note. If you have any comments on anything we talk about today, we'll try to shout you out next time. We also appreciate it if you share the podcast with a friend online or in person. And also remember to hop over to YouTube. We're doing some video stuff over there, and please like and subscribe to help out the algorithm.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you didn't know, we also timestamp all this stuff too. So if there's any specific parts of the episode you'd like to jump to, feel free to check those out in the description below.
So, with that, we'll get into the news for the week. We're going to start off with the fact that the Wii U and 3DS eShops are officially dead. I think is the time this comes out, right?
Yeah, I checked right before we recorded, and they are kaput. Yeah.
So I was thinking about this when you were talking about how you bought a bunch of 3DS games. Do you think Nintendo is learning the wrong lesson by everybody rushing to buy? Garrett, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Absolutely. I mean, that was the biggest deal with the Mario All-Stars pack, right? Like, yeah, you made a great collection of 3 games. Why have it be temporary? But unfortunately, anytime they make something temporary, people just toss the dollar bill. It's like, artificial scarcity. So,
well, hopefully they have some kind of numbers on the sheer number of people that are going to be hacking their fucking 3DSs at this point. Because it's very, very easy to do. And all of those games are archived. And it's especially because, now you can go back and you can re-download like the store is like very threadbare now. Like they took away all the icons that used to be in there. There's a little banner that says you can't buy them anymore.
Creepy funeral music plays. Yeah.
yeah. You just see Mario hanging from a noose in the top. But no, it's sorry. But so you could re-download your old purchases, but any free content is not like re-downloadable, or you might be able to re-download it if you like purchased it, quote unquote. But like any free software you're not able to get anymore. So it's like a lot of that stuff is now just purely up to the archivists who are keeping all this stuff up in, you know, pirate shops and servers for the systems. And yeah, I mean, I hope, you know, this is, you know, bound to happen with old stores. I wish they had kept this one up for a lot longer. But at the same time, I mean, fuck, I started playing a whole bunch of 3DS games I never played before in the past week. And it's morally correct to pirate these games going forward. So don't worry too much about it.
Truly. Also, I mean, it is at least nice. I mean, I don't know what the standard is for this, but it's nice that they gave us like a heads up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a solid year. Yeah.
Everybody just buy as much as you can. It's going to be gone. Like,
That's true. Well, something else that is come to an end is Ash's story in the Pokemon anime or cartoon. Oddly, I don't have a lot of nostalgia for this, but recently my son has been watching it, so I have actually kind of absorbed some of it recently. He's been
like
watching
the original series.
He's watching the recent stuff, like the Sword and Shield Galar stuff. I guess that's probably whatever season popped up on his Netflix account, right? Like that's my guess. Or Pokemon, whatever. I don't know what they call them now, but anyway, 25 years of Ash. What do y'all have more? Like, did y'all watch this when you were?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I was a hyper fan of the show when it first came out in like 98 or whatever. You know, I had a whole bunch of these episodes on VHS and I'd watch them over and over and over again. My first CD I ever owned, let me say this first. The second CD I ever owned was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. But the first CD I ever owned was Pokemon To Be a Master, the CD that was like the companion CD to the show.
Wow. And
I listened to the shit out of that. I have every one of those songs I have completely memorized. And it was all like around that like first season or so of the show. So that show really meant a lot to me. You know, obviously I haven't really been following along. I mean, you know, I don't mean to make it sound like if you have, you're some weirdo or something. But it's like, you know, it's.
I mean, I don't mean to suggest that. That would be
I don't know.
really terrible.
But no, you know, it's just crazy that, you know, we've been following this arc basically of Pokemon for 25 years, and they're finally moving on.
Did he finally catch them all?
I think so. Yeah, I think he
He
caught them all, and he won all the badges, and
it's going to be on his gravestone. Caught them all.
10 years old.
Yeah. Somehow he's still like 10 years old, which, you know, riddle me that.
Cartoon. It's like The Simpsons or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I huge Pokemon anime fan. Whenever I was a kid, it was like probably the first 2 seasons. But once again, you know, had a bunch of them on VHS, just played them again and again and again. My friend Reese, whenever I was a kid, he memorized the Poke Rap, and that was like the biggest deal whenever I was in elementary school, because I would like watch the exactly. I had it on VHS, and so it's not quite as easy as it would be in DVD form to like pause, rewind. You know what I mean? So I would just watch it and try to absorb as much as I possibly could, and then not remember any of it. Like, of course, no, like the general, you know, rhythm, but
right.
All right, I do not know. Is this a rap where they like kind of like this 50 Nifty United States where they say every Pokemon's name or something?
Basically, yeah. They would do them in like they would do them like piecemeal after episodes, right? And then on the CD they collected it all as like one big song.
And it's like it's kind of it's even less of a rap than the DK64 rap, where it's like the loosest term for rap you could ever use. It's just literally listing names of Pokemon and then a little chorus, and then just names of, and it goes on, the whole extended version goes on for quite a lot, because it's 151. Like
a lot.
So many names.
They somehow made it all rhyme.
That's right.
All right. Well, that might be worth checking out. Okay.
Yeah, can't believe you've never heard the Poke Rap before.
Yeah. But something else that is not ending now but might end in 10 years is Call of Duty on PlayStation. So you know, we've talked about this quite a bit, but I thought that this was kind of interesting. I think it's in the UK, the regulators there that are looking at this. It came out that Microsoft has specifically said they think that, they promise, I think this is they promise 10 years of Call of Duty, right? We kind of already knew that, but then they believe that is enough time for Sony as a leading publisher and console platform to develop alternatives to Call of Duty, is the quote that I think is really interesting.
I agree. Right. I mean, are they wrong? Right. Like a decade I mean, it's not guaranteed that if you like put all your shit into fucking, whatever they've got Bungie working on or whatever, that it's going to take off as much as Call of Duty. But I mean, come on, guys, like the one thing that's been the most tiring about this whole back and forth between Sony and Microsoft over Activision is them just constantly negging themselves and being like, oh, well, we could never come up with something as good as Call of Duty. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like the most generic military shooter ever, like it's only big because it's been big, right? So it's like, you've got all this like talent and studios and all the shit you've done on your own. I'm so ready for this whole thing to be over. And it kind of seems like it is wrapping up, right? I think we're at like the 1 year anniversary of them announcing this deal.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll hear more about it, right? Like, unfortunately, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it before it gets, whatever happens. But this was a little news bite that was interesting to hear.
I mean, the CMA, like the UK kind of trade commission sort of thing, is basically okayed it. Like as far as like Europe is concerned, this thing is a done deal. So I think it kind of falls down to the FTC now at this point. But I think with all these other countries being like, we don't really see there being a huge conflict of interest, I think it's only a matter of time before, U.S. regulators do the same.
Gotcha. Well, another really big shooter got an announcement. Counterstrike. There's going to be a new Counterstrike game, and I think that's maybe not super relevant to our audience. I don't think a lot of crossover for Nintendo fans, but Counterstrike 2 got announced. Maybe, I'm sure there are some people out there listening. And I know just Valve and Counterstrike are really big games and a big deal. And I thought we should at least mention it and talk about it.
Yeah. Anytime Valve announces that they're making a new game, that's huge news in the world of gaming, right? Valve, famously one of the most like prolific, game developers of like the PC generation and like the early 2000s. Then they just kind of stopped making games other than like Dota, and, so a new Counter-Strike is really great. It really gives me more than anything. I mean, I'm happy for Counter-Strike fans, right? But more than anything, this just makes me hope that we'll have some sort of Half-Life or Portal game again in the future, because that's really what I want out of Valve. Did you play Counter-Strike, Garrett?
Never played Counter-Strike. I echo your thoughts on Valve. There's so much potential there. It's insane how many banger after banger after banger game they make. Also, Counter-Strike, it's surprising to me that they would make a sequel to that game, because that's one of those, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm showing my age here, but that just seems like a forever game.
So I think
it's always been competitive.
I am not huge on this, but I have one of my cousins is a really big Counter-Strike player, like thousands and thousands of hours. So I asked his opinion about this, and he explained that there actually are multiple iterations of Counter-Strike. And that none of them are like
CSGO.
So right? That was the most recent one, but there still is Counter-Strike 1 point something that still exists and people still play, and there's still thousands and I think maybe even like hundreds of thousands of like concurrent players on all the old ones, and CSGO will still exist, I think, and stuff like that.
Right, I think Counter-Strike 2 is like replacing
CSGO.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Overwatch 2, like how that's kind of a free to play replacement for Overwatch, right?
Yeah.
I think they're kind of trying to do something similar with Counter-Strike 2. It even has the same kind of color palette, but I'm not like super interested in this. That being said, if they ever make a Team Fortress 3, man, I am way in on that. I love Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 is like the most Nintendo-y shooter outside of Splatoon, obviously. It's, very like cartoony and colorful and really fun, and the classes kind of almost reminds me of like Smash almost in a way, like the way that the different classes play. So if they ever make a Team Fortress 3, I'm gonna be playing that all the time because I put so many hours into that game.
I have a theory. I have a theory for Valve. This is, I know everybody, the memes about Half-Life 3 is very 2009, but Sorry, my cat's just absolutely meowing right next to me.
Yeah, I heard that. That was cute.
Maybe this is Valve's long con. Get every single game that is their IP to a sequel.
To a two.
And then make the next orange box just be all trilogies. Just all three.
Oops, all threes. Yeah,
that's what they got to do.
I love that idea.
But that's long con. That's in 45 years.
Yeah. Or they're sitting on Half-Life 3 and Portal 3 and Team Fortress 3 all right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. That's crazy. I mean, it makes sense. Now is the time, Valve, to get back into making games. You've got a console now, basically, with the Steam Deck. Exclusives. If not Steam Deck exclusives, Steam exclusives from Valve are going to really help move hardware of the Steam Deck, I think. So now is the time to start doing that stuff.
Next up, there has been a rumor, I think that comes from Xbox Era Podcast, that Skies of Arcadia, which is a Dreamcast game, right?
Originally, then a GameCube game.
Then a game.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't honestly know a lot about this game, so jump in and take over for me. But this game is going to get remastered and re-released. That's it, right? I don't know a lot about this. Was this a big game? That's sort of a blind spot for me.
I mean, Skies of Arcadia fucking rips, dude. Skies of Arcadia is such a good goddamn game. It was one of the best, if not the best game on the Dreamcast. The GameCube port of it was even better. And then there was a sequel as well. Skies of Arcadia is just a really, really, really excellent RPG. That would be, fans have been begging for a remaster of this game forever. And I think now really seems like the time. And I think, I don't have too much to add to this either, because this is just kind of a rumor at the moment. It's not even necessarily like super corroborated at the moment, but I think a lot of people are talking about it online. So I wanted to bring it up. And it just seems like it fits right now in this era of GameCube games getting remakes, right? Between Baten Kaitos and Metroid Prime and Resident Evil 4. And, so this would fit right in. So I really hope that this ends up happening. And I just wanted to say Skies of Arcadia on a podcast, which is why I put it in the show notes.
Checked
it off.
Well, this past week we got the news that the Fire Emblem Engage DLC Wave 4, which is the big one, the story one called Fel Xenologue, is dated now for April 4th. And that's pretty crazy, because I think originally they said that this would come, I want to say like by the end of the year or something, or maybe like by summer or something. I think they said
crazy. Summer.
Yeah, something that's a lot farther off than April. And I think that's been true of a couple of things lately, right? Like where they've been kind of under promising and over delivering on dates of some of these things.
Xenoblade Chronicles was like that too, where they said we'd be getting the DLC at some point, and then it came out really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, makes you wonder how long this has been done, and they just wanted to polish it, and then oops, all polished. Here you go, or whatever. I don't know.
Also, does that mean that they're just parsing out bits of the game to release later as DLC?
Oh, definitely.
Are we getting to that point with Nintendo? It seems like that hasn't been the case, but
I will say,
you think they're doing that here?
Well, yes, but I also think that arguably as a game developer, you are deciding on DLC early on, right? And I don't think that's wrong.
No, of course not.
So I don't think that these things feel like parts of the game where they're like, oh, what if we took this out and made it DLC? I played through a whole of, 60 hours of Fire Emblem Engage and was happy. And you know what I mean? I feel like
you're not going to be picking up this DLC.
I don't know that I will. I haven't yet. I'm kind of glad I haven't yet, because I feel like a lot of the people lately on our Discord have been slogging through the game that had the DLC because they did all the extra stuff. And I enjoyed my time quite a bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're all like, I'm kind of tired of this now. So if I do ever pick it up, I feel like I'll have the energy for it. But I don't know. I felt like that Fire Emblem Three Houses DLC was too hard for me. It was appealing to hardcore fans, and I didn't ever like beat it because it just was like the difficulty, even on normal or whatever, was super hard. And it just, I think that's why I think that maybe it's not what you're saying, David, because I think it is arguably, you can make the argument that if somebody's designing DLC ahead of time, but I think that's just the way the games are made now, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, my theory is that they finished it a while ago.
Oh,
and they've just been fucking sitting on it. But I mean, it also could be that this Fire Emblem Engage has been done for a really long time. And, you know, up to the release of the game, they were working on the DLC, and then they're just holding it for a few months. So it doesn't seem like they just did it all. You know what I mean? I think it's like, we just know Nintendo holds finished games for a long time. And so if they know they're doing DLC, they're probably, you know, working on or even finishing that DLC before the base game even releases. Right?
Which feels weird.
But
I don't know that it is, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting
We'll never
discussion.
know because of the Iron Curtain of Nintendo. We need another Giga Leak.
Oh boy. Well, if there's nothing else on that, then some Splatoon news. There's going to be a new Squid Sisters song debuting in this weekend's Splatfest. Reminder real quick there that there's Splatfest. We're all playing Switch Headz. We're big Splatoon players. Team Alien in the Splatfest this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if you got the DLC, speaking of DLC, right? For Splatoon 3, you can go take the subway or whatever, right? And go watch the Squid Sisters instead of, what is the deep cut? I don't know. I'm feeling
deep cut.
Yeah.
Deep cut.
So
off the hook was Splatoon 2. Deep cut is Splatoon 3.
Yeah. What do we think about this? I guess this is a good way to make the DLC arguably a little more interesting instead of just it's still just a skin. Yeah. But I
mean, it's not. I mean, one of the best things about Splatoon are the Splatfests, right? And the way that the game feels alive, and the idols put on a little show and they do a little dance, and the whole square, you know, everybody's holding up their signs that they drew on their Switch screen, and you know, everybody's like dancing to the music and doing, you know, at a little concert. And so it's like, I think just the fact that they're adding a whole separate one for Inkopolis with the old characters from the Wii U game is pretty cool. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, Splatoon just continues to be one of my favorite like lores of all the Nintendo properties. And it's cool that they continue to flesh it out like this.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's a whole lot else there, though. I would say
we're basically a Splatoon podcast.
It kind of feels like I am lately. I'll save it for the games we've been playing. That's all I've been playing.
Come on. You can't give up the ghost that easily.
Yeah. But another thing that got announced, moving on.
Yeah.
We'll move on. I think this one's wild. Sonic Origins Plus. I wanted to talk about this because I guess this is coming this summer, right? June 23rd. Sonic Origins came out about a year ago, right? Or like June last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. It was in the summer.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's terrible to put out a deluxe version a year later or not, but it feels a little suspect to me. Arguably, I don't know. Maybe it's not a big deal.
It's exactly what they did with Sonic Mania Plus.
That's true.
I think everything they've done with this release has been trying to mimic Sonic Mania's success. Right?
That's a good call.
Yeah. I mean, all the way down to like the animated cutscenes and stuff like that. You know, that was one of the big things was the Tyson Hess like intro to Sonic Mania, right? Like that blew up on the internet. Sonic fans were agog. And so it's like, you know, that they emulated that this time. They did the same they're doing the same sort of DLC strategy. It was the same with Sonic Mania too, where Sonic Mania Plus was the physical release of the game.
That's right.
Well after the download only game had released originally, right? And they're doing that with this as well.
Yeah, and so I guess it adds a bunch of games and adds playable Amy into some of the games and that sort of thing. So honestly, I had never picked this game up, and so like, despite what I just said, maybe they got me. They got me with Sonic Mania Plus. That's when I got it. So maybe they're going to get me with Sonic Origins Plus.
I mean, I think it's worth it. I think this is a great package, and I'm not just saying that because my company did the cutscenes for this game. But it's like, I think, like especially now that they've added 12 Game Gear games.
It's a lot to add. Yeah,
it's a lot. You know,
I don't know if all of them are valuable, but you know,
I wish they had included some of the Master System versions of these games instead of the Game Gear games, because they're basically the same. It's just Game Gear is like zoomed in more. You know what I mean? So I think having the Master System versions would have been better. But that said, it's still really nice to have extras. Amy being playable in all 4 of the games is awesome. And Knuckles is playable in Sonic CD now. And then also, like, this game was pretty buggy and a bit broken when it was released. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not trying to defend that. Like, it should have been better when it released, right? But the fact that they're putting out a physical version now after all the bugs have been fixed, you know, at least the physical version of the game that's all on the cart is going to be like the fixed version, you know what I mean? And not totally busted. So if in the future, when the Nintendo Switch eShop goes down, if you've got the cartridge, you know, you'll have like the best version of this game, basically. Now that's not, I'm not trying to defend it. It was very much felt like an early access game when they released this, you know, because it was pretty busted. But this is a really great collection, and I think it's going to be even better now. Sonic Mania Plus is way better than Sonic Mania, so I think this is a good collection for sure.
Garrett, are you a Sonic fan? Does this interest you, or you don't care?
Not a huge Sonic fan. I like Sonic Mania quite a bit. And I had whichever collection of Sonic, maybe the Mega collection on the GameCube when I was a kid.
Great collection.
And I would just play Sonic and Knuckles exclusively for some reason as a kid. I just only wanted, I was like, man, that guy's red. That's so cool.
Red Sonic.
I have a good amount of experience with Sonic Mania and with Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and, you know, minor experience, but any of the 3D Sonics, I keep throwing my hat in the ring. I keep trying Sonic Adventure and all these 3D Sonics, and never really sticks. But I don't dislike. I like Sonic the concept. You know what I mean?
You like his attitude.
I like he loves chili dogs. I mean, this is a cool guy. He's so fast.
Doesn't afraid of anything. Yeah, I think I would really recommend picking this one up. It's like, these are definitely the best versions of the game. I mean, a lot of people would, you know, Sonic hardcores will disagree, but Sonic hardcores are insane and don't engage with them. But I'm sorry, I don't know. I've been burned by Sonic Twitter too many times. But it's like, these are great versions of the game. They run really well. They're widescreen. You know, it's like all the great mobile ports have basically been ported into this collection, and it's got a lot of extras, and it's adding even more extras now. So I think this is definitely a good one to like reintroduce yourself, especially if you're a first-time Sonic player for a lot of these games. This is a really great way to jump in.
All right. Well, last up is almost not worth us mentioning this, but I think we have to. That is that Nintendo is going to show off 10 minutes of gameplay from The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We record our podcast on Monday night. It comes out on Wednesday. Of course, they're doing this on Tuesday in between. So
purely to spite us.
Exactly. They know.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
They hate us. They hate us because we say fuck.
That's why, yeah. But Aonuma is going to be giving us 10 minutes of gameplay. I don't know. This is interesting, right? This feels like a Sakurai Presents kind of a little bit in the way that like the like screen cap that they showed of like him sitting there with a controller at a desk,
playing 2 controllers.
You can, you know, this has no benefit in this game whatsoever, but he's doing it anyway. Yeah,
showing off the remapping capabilities of the Nintendo Switch.
So I don't know. It's entirely possible that at the end of this 10-minute presentation, they say, and look forward to, you know, another bit of information. But I do want to speculate about / what this is, because this feels different. It's not a full direct. They aren't calling it a direct, at least so far. And there's only 10 minutes of gameplay. Presumably he'll talk a bit too. So what do you think? I think I saw Kit from Kit and Krista, you know, on Twitter say that he feels like this is the compromise between developers who don't want to show anything from the game and marketing who wants to show as much as possible to get sales.
100%. Yeah, it's got to be that, right? I mean, we've gotten longer directs for games that don't need them, you know, that don't need all the mechanics explained, right? Like this game arguably like needs, I don't think it does. I think the hype is strong and this game is going to fly off the fucking shit.
Yeah, it's one of the most
but it's like
games.
But we just don't know anything about what differentiates this from Breath of the Wild, right? So it's like, so I think marketing is like, guys, come on, this is coming out in like 2 months. Like we need something.
Every trailer that you've let us put out is arcane and esoteric. Like let's do something that explains something. Yeah.
I mean, I'll watch this because we do a Nintendo podcast and we need to cover it, but it's like, if I didn't, I don't know that I would watch this even. I'm kind of digging not knowing anything and going in totally blind, right? So either way, it's exciting. Again, if you're listening to this, you've probably already seen it. And you know what's in it, but we'll be sure to cover it, like what was in it next week on the show.
Yeah.
Are you excited, Garrett, for Tears of the Kingdom?
I mean, thrilled. Yeah. It. I feel very similarly to you, where it's the fanboy in me is like, why have we not seen more? We need to see more. Show as much as you possibly can in the trailers. But I'm also really, I mean, this is very unique. I don't feel like I feel like this about any Nintendo games, most games generally, where it's like, I am 100% certain that I'm gonna buy the game. I'm pretty certain that I'm gonna thoroughly enjoy the game. I don't know anything about what really to expect, especially because it's like, I don't know, there's just so many variables. Sorry, my cat just keeps meowing in the background.
That one sounded like a duck's quack.
It did. Yeah. Do you have a duck and a cat?
Yeah. Did your cat eat a duck and it's quacking from within?
That's right. That's right.
I think it's a unique situation because we know it's Breath of the Wild sequel. We know it looks and feels and plays the same. So they don't have to explain that, right? Like they don't have to explain the core game or the base gameplay. But I think like David said, they could arguably need to differentiate it, but I'm not even sure they need to do that. Like, yeah, it's a weird situation where everybody, I feel like we on our Discord, people will be like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous, but also I don't want to see this. You know what I mean? Like, or like I kind of want to know more, but I don't. I think a lot of people in there and that. So I think the marketing has worked by being sort of vague and stuff. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Everybody else has seen the gameplay that's listening and watching, so I guess we should move on and we'll talk about it next week.
Shut up now. Yeah.
Okay.
We've said enough times that we'll talk about it next week to where I don't feel like I need to do a whole David from the Future segment. So we'll talk about it next week.
We'll talk about it. Well, I think that does it then for our news segment. And when we come back, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking all about the Castlevania franchise, and in particular, the Dead Cells DLC Castlevania crossover. Okay, we are back, and this week we are talking about Castlevania. We're going to talk a little bit about the franchise as a whole, but we're going to mostly be talking about Dead Cells, the Castlevania and Dead Cells DLC that has come out. And also talking about the future of Castlevania, and what this means and what we would like to see happen now that maybe there's new Castlevania stuff happening. I don't know if this counts or not. Well, we're going to talk about all that. But first, should we give a little bit of the history of this franchise, or is there anybody who wants to talk about what it means to them to start us off? Or are y'all big Castlevania fans? I guess maybe we could start there. Like Garrett, you're here for a reason, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Garrett, this topic was your idea. I know you're a big Castlevania fan. Maybe tell us some about what the series means to you and how you found the series.
Oh, of course. I love Castlevania. It's I think in the top 3 favorite franchises of all time, alongside like Zelda and Resident Evil. Just love them. Can't get enough. Castlevania's interesting because I generally am a like Symphony of the Night forward 2D Castlevania fan.
Sure.
An Igavania fan?
The Igavanias, exactly. So I appreciate all of it, and I'll play any of the games, but I've never committed to fully playing through and beating the first 3 games. But every single game, there's something to love. I just love the concept that it's all like royalty-free Halloween monsters, like just a bunch of mummies and Frankensteins. It's very, very funny. I love the aesthetic. I love the games so much.
Totally. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this on the show know, but I work on the Castlevania Netflix show as an editor that's made here in Austin, Texas, and we're currently working on a new Castlevania series called Castlevania Nocturne that'll be coming out sometime soon. And it's funny how often we'll hear like people, like fans of like the game specifically, bitch about our show, being like, oh my God, you're not giving it the gravitas that the series like requires. I'm like, bro, like the games are silly. Like it's, it's the guy's got a whip because the person who made the game just watched Indiana Jones right before he made it. And they, and they have all these very silly monsters that, like you said, they're like an amalgam of all the kind of like universal monsters and stuff like that. So it's always been a bit of a silly series, but like, I think part of what makes people really like the franchise as a whole is how like seriously it takes itself. You know what I mean? It's got this almost like melodramatic kind of like gravitas to it that in a video game works really well. And like the show, we had to embellish a lot just in order to, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people say it's a really good like adaptation, but it's not an adaptation like Last of Us or something where you can just kind of take it word for word. You kind of have to like come up with some new stuff in order to make the NES game make sense in a modern context, right?
Absolutely.
I love the series. I also got in around the Iga era of the Castlevanias, like around that Metroidvania like time, post Symphony of the Night. I think the ones that really got me into the franchise were the Game Boy Advance games, and I played the shit out of those, and I've been a huge fan ever since. Really need a new game sometime soon.
I mean, the last one was Lords of Shadow 2, and that was so long ago. And even then, I'm not a monumental fan of either of those games. The 2D Castlevania, they would just print money. But I don't think Konami's in the game-making business right now. I think, like Metal Gear Solid, so many of their big franchises, they don't really seem to have much interest in. I guess that's not true. They got Silent Hill. They're doing Silent Hill stuff.
Right, but I mean, and I think we could save some of this for the end when we talk about what we want out of the future of the series. But you're right. It's like Konami themselves aren't making these games a lot. Now they're kind of like leaning on other developers in order to like make this stuff. It seems that that's kind of their MO now, right?
Certainly.
And so hopefully we see some of that in the future for sure.
Well, y'all have hinted at this, so I thought, we don't have to spend a lot of time. Our plan isn't to like go over every game, but I thought maybe we could talk about just a little bit. I will admit that I'm not the biggest Castlevania person. Like I played the first couple at friends' houses mostly. But yeah, the first games came out on the NES in like the late 80s. And that's sort of honestly the most Castlevania I played, probably.
Oh, really? Just the NES games?
Yeah, honestly. And some Super
They get a lot better.
Yeah. I've been really meaning to play the ones that y'all talking about, but I think we should say, the first, I don't know how many years of this franchise is not what people think of when they say Metroidvania, right? Like they were more linear games and like and then it was what Symphony of the Night where that sort of changed, but nonetheless,
where they started emulating the Metroid series basically in its exploration,
right?
Yeah, that is one thing where I love Castlevania so much. The phrase Metroidvania is giving Castlevania a lot of leeway on that game design. Like Super Metroid was out for years and years and years before the PlayStation and Symphony of the Night.
Or the original Metroid.
Which
is
had
like the original Metroidvania. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I guess that what the difference is, or the reason that became a thing is that, sci-fi versus more fantasy and like ranged weapons versus more melee combat, right? That's why it happened. But yeah, so for 10 years, this franchise pumped out games, but they weren't what we think of now, right? Like, but yeah, I really want to play Symphony of the Night sometime. but that's kind of a hard one to find, right? Like legally, whatever.
For the Switch, yeah. It's like not available on
the
the Switch, which is really annoying. I mean, on PlayStation, it's pretty easy to get.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's there's like the Dracula X Chronicles, I believe. Is that what it's called? Where it's a 2-pack of Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood, which are kind of the Richter Belmont and Alucard kind of games. And so those are available on PlayStation. Symphony of the Night has a great mobile port as well, which I think is only $3. It's like really cheap on mobile. You just have to play it on a phone. But I have a little grip that I played it on my phone with like my 8-bit DO controller with a little grip on it, right? But I mean, it doesn't make any sense why it's not on the Switch, right?
It's not on some sort of weird Steam, agreement. Is it? Like I think it's on Steam. Is it?
Good question.
I thought it wasn't, but I really don't know. I should have confirmed that before I say anything. But I guess
it's not. You're right. Yeah. It's not on Steam.
So that's where I wanted it to be. But it doesn't matter. Or on Switch. What is available on Switch, we should just mention, is the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which is a lot of the earlier games, including Super Castlevania, which I did want to mention too, because that's another one that I did play. I rented that a few times.
Well, yeah, I mean, those older, style of Castlevania games, they're definitely still worth playing. They're very good. They're just not as like iconic, I think, as some of the later ones, in my opinion. I think a lot of people would have different opinions on that. But those are all kind of collected in the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which is on the Switch. And so those are really, really awesome ones to get. If you want some more of this post-Symphony of the Night version, definitely you want to get Castlevania Advanced Collection, which is probably the best money you could spend on Castlevania, the Castlevania franchise on the Switch currently. Those are all super classic games, and I really love those. Yeah,
for sure. I'm curious because Castlevania has a lot of really, really solid games on the DS. I'm curious how Nintendo's gonna treat DS emulation on the Switch generally. Like if you have two screens, you're just swapping to it like a menu or something. I don't know.
I think there have been a number of DS games ported to the Switch. Like if you look at the Mega Man 0 and ZX collection on the Switch, that includes DS games. And the way they kind of do it is they've got one big screen that's kind of to the left, that's taking up most of the screen, and then to the right there's like a smaller screen, which is the touch screen, right? Okay. I think that some of the games, like especially I believe Dawn of Sorrow or Order of Ecclesia, I'm not sure which one it is, but there's a lot of drawing on the bottom screen to do spells and stuff like that, right? So I don't know exactly how they do that. They probably map some of that to the right stick or something like that. They could get creative with it, but I feel like they definitely would need a little bit more work than the Advanced
Game Boy
collection.
Advance. We just put it out there and it's done.
But that said, I really put a lot of faith in M2. M2 are the people that have been doing the Konami Anniversary collections. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they also did the Mega Man collections for Capcom. I might be wrong on that, so forgive me if I am. But they added a lot of really good quality of life stuff to those Game Boy Advance ports in that collection. And so I have faith that they could figure it out. I think it's probably just a matter of time before those games come to the Switch. And I really hope they do because they're awesome.
Oh, so good. The Advanced Collection is phenomenal. All of those games, even it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like other franchises where your least favorite of the games are still remarkably good games. You know what I mean? Like the bar is just so high. Like I said, I hadn't really touched a lot of the older games. I'd like play the first 2-3 levels of like the first Castlevania or Simon's Quest or whatever. Then I'd be like, okay, not really for me. Just not really hard.
They're tough.
Very hard. Very, very hard. But this last week, I fully played through and beat Super Castlevania 4 for the first time. Oh, it really feels like it means something. I was not good at that game, and it was a very like almost Dark Souls like experience where it's just I can feel the game like insulting me every time. I'm getting so achingly close, but like. Beating that Dracula at the end of that game is ridiculous. It is a silly boss fight. It is so hard. But yeah, it's great. Super Castlevania 4, highly recommend. I think it's probably from my limited experience, my favorite of that generation of game, just because it gives you more mobility. You can swing your whip straight up or at an angle. In so many of the other Castlevania games, you got a whip going directly in front of you. That is it. A
little better graphics too.
I agree. Have you played Rondo of Blood, Garrett?
Oh, Rondo of Blood's so good. Rondo of Blood, yeah.
I feel like that's the pinnacle. That's the pinnacle for me of that style of Castlevania, right? I mean, it was the last one they did, right? So it kind of like makes sense. But it's like that game really, really nailed it quite a bit. And it's probably worth playing before Nocturne comes out because, it's kind of set in the same era as Nocturne as well, the new show. But Rondo of Blood is excellent. There was also a really good PSP remake of Rondo of Blood that's in 3D. And a lot of people think that is bad because the pixel art is like gorgeous on the original version, but I have a soft spot for that PSP remake and I play it all the time.
Rondo of Blood is one of those games as a kid that I was just like littered with misinformation about what that game really was because it was on the PC Engine, which was not, especially popular in Texas in the early 2000s. And I played Symphony of the Night, love Symphony of the Night, but the beginning of Symphony of the Night is like a final boss sequence from the end of Rondo of Blood. Right. But when it starts, it says Bloodlines as like the chapter title. And the Sega Castlevania game is called Bloodlines. And so I was playing this knowing that this is like clearly a whole other guy with his whole other quest getting to the final boss of Dracula. And like, I didn't know if this was a game, what this was from. Like, also the mistranslation of the opening of Symphony of the Night is just...
Oh, it's chef's kiss.
It's just the best video game dialogue. That's one thing that you were talking about a second ago where you were mentioning fans getting grumpy about you're not giving it the gravitas. Castlevania is just so silly. They got skeletons throwing their bones at you as weapons. Like all of the dialogue from Symphony of the Night is just ridiculous. It's super duper B movie, super duper hammy. But like you said, they take it so gothic and seriously. Love it.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's anything else in terms of the old games we want to talk about, but I guess we should mention that, like you said, Garrett, the last game was Lords of Shadow 2, 2014. That was PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. So it's been almost a decade since a new Castlevania game. Like you said, Konami doesn't seem to want to make games. They just want to make these collections of old games. Though this Dead Cells thing happened. So
maybe before that we can briefly say Iga, who I'm kind of forgetting his first name, but Igarashi, right? I don't know. Everybody just calls him Iga, right? But he was the guy who was like the director of Symphony of the Night, and he did all the DS and Game Boy Advance games, and was kind of seen as like the savior of the franchise, right? Like he has made some games since then. Like his kind of spiritual successor to it was Bloodstained, both Ritual of the Night and then Curse of the Moon was the 8-bit one, right?
Yeah,
am I correct? Right. Yeah. And so those games are good as well. I just really hope somehow Konami gets him back to make more, right? Because there's something, the secret sauce is missing when it's not a Belmont, right? Like that you're playing as, like, and so I really hope that they bring that back. But the spirit of the games continues to live on, as well as in this new Dead Cells DLC.
And there's the anime, right? So they're obviously they've kept it in people's minds, and that. So yeah, but so I think this is just an interesting situation here with Dead Cells because Dead Cells has been around for a while. It came out in August of 2018, so not quite 5 years, but we're coming up on it 5 years in this summer. And then this DLC we got announced at the beginning of the year, right? Like pretty short announcement schedule, before release. It came out in March, early March. Yeah, it's just an interesting crossover, right? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in some ways it makes almost like too much sense. I mean, I feel like Dead Cells at its core is just trying to be roguelike Castlevania. So much so that I think it coined the term Roguevania, right? Like, and now, what was it? Getsu Fumaden, Undying Moon was released by Konami. And that is, if you're not familiar, Getsu Fumaden was kind of like the precursor to Castlevania. It was like a very Japanese themed game that, you know, they kind of reskinned the basic ideas of that and turned it into the original Castlevania. And so now they've kind of gone back to that franchise, and they're using the term Roguevania because it's a roguelike, right? And it plays like Dead Cells. So, you know, Dead Cells has always very much worn that inspiration on its sleeve. And this just kind of speaks to some of where I think Konami is at now, where they're like, yeah, okay, Netflix, make a show about our game. We're not going to make a game, but you can make a show. We're not going to make a game, but you guys can use this and use all this music and use Richter and Alucard and Maria and all that like in it, right? So it's nice to see it included, but it just makes me want a game really bad.
Yeah,
right?
and the Belmonts got added to Smash, and so it's definitely like in the last few years, like existing in all these other ways. And then it comes to Dead Cells. I haven't played it. I have watched David play it. So I would love for y'all to talk about, you know, Dead Cells, you know, does it feel different than the core game? And you know, or like, does it just sort of feel like a skin? I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts about this?
Sure. I remember having kind of like almost a like bell curve of reactions to, because it was announced during the Game Awards. It was like the second or third announcement at the very beginning of the Game Awards this last year. And it starts and you just see, you know, Dracula's castle, obviously. You see bats. You see the main character of Dead Cells, but at this point I had never played Dead Cells, so it's just some like Fire Headz guy. Yeah, I had never played Dead Cells. And so I'm watching it, I'm like, this looks a lot like a Castlevania game. And then suddenly you see Alucard, you see Richter, the music kicks in. I'm just hyped beyond imagination. Like they're finally making another Castlevania game. Took them long enough. And then it's like Dead Cells DLC. And it's like the monkey paw curls where you got what you want, but not, you know. And so I remember being so excited and then kind of a little bit disappointed to be like, oh, it's just DLC for some other game. And then I played a little bit of Dead Cells before the DLC came out. And I was like, okay, man, it's not 100% clicking with me. Like, you know, I like the aesthetic certainly, and I like running around in the levels, but roguelikes are just that kind of genre where you're just gonna make a lot of progress and die, and then make more progress and die again. So it wasn't really working. And then maybe I'm just like, I have a child's brain, but the second I downloaded the DLC, when you get the costumes and the music and the location, I was just like, this is the best game ever made. This is just incredible.
Yeah, and it takes a bit, especially, you know, I played Dead Cells when it came out, like back in 2018. I love that game. You know, I used to be a lot more into roguelikes than I am now. You know, Spelunky and Binding of Isaac, I've put thousands of hours into Binding of Isaac. And I think if you put like 2,000 to 3,000 hours into Binding of Isaac, your appetite for roguelikes kind of goes down a little bit, right? You know, and it's like, you know, and a lot of games were hard for me to like actually make the same kind of progress that I did in Binding of Isaac in them, right? Like Hades is one of those for me. Like I was, you know, I like Hades is an incredible game. Like I recommend it to everybody, right? But it never hooked me in the same way that Binding of Isaac did, mainly because you can only have so much time for so many roguelikes, you know, when they have like infinitely playable levels, you know, it's like, you can't really commit. It's like kind of like the same problem with games as a service, right?
Yeah,
it's
or like a fighting game or something. You can't get good at every fighting game, right?
Yeah,
like,
although I do know people that are good at every fighting game. But that is beside the point.
I can't get good at every fighting
game. But no, I mean, so when I picked up this DLC, I was like, great, this is a good reason to like go back, right? And it was like kind of, I was getting my ass kicked. I was like, man, how the fuck do you play this again? I kind of forgot like all the little intricacies of the game. But then you do a couple runs and it all started coming back to me, right? Like the movement, the dodging, the multiple weapons, the cooldowns and all that kind of stuff. And it just fits really, really, really well into the Castlevania world, right? So I'm really enjoying that. I'm enjoying how, you know, I haven't gotten that far into it. I know that there's sections that you can unlock where you play as Richter. I haven't gotten to that yet. Have you unlocked that yet, Garrett?
Yeah. I've put about 50 hours into it, and I've beaten Dracula, got all the costumes. I mentioned earlier that South by Southwest was this last week, and as the box office in between movies, once the movie's playing for 2 hours, I'm just sitting in the office just going crazy on it. So good. So yeah, played it.
So can you explain to me what? Because so when you're playing the DLC normally, you're playing as the main character of Dead Cells, and you kind of like go down these stairs, and it takes you to the outside of Dracula's castle, and then you can kind of unlock more areas of Dracula's castle as you go, but you're playing as the Dead Cells character. What's the difference between that and the like playable Alucard, playable Richter sections?
Okay, yeah. So it's one of those kind of strange things where I think it's good and also bad, where the game just does not tell you how to get to the DLC. It doesn't tell you how to like get to the Castlevania stuff as soon as you start playing. But you do a couple runs, and suddenly, like you said, this big staircase shows up that takes you to the front of the castle. You can play through there up into a point, and then you'll have a boss fight, and some other NPC, I think it's probably Richter, comes up, and they kind of give you the whole spiel where they're like, hey, Dracula, he's a guy in a castle. We got to go kill him. At that point, if you're in one run, you know, if you've been playing for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes or something, you get to that point, that boss fight, there's no more Castlevania stuff for you to do until you die, essentially. So once you die, it kind of resets, and then you go through different levels, and more stuff will open up, and eventually you'll get to the main castle. And then once you're officially in Dracula's castle, there's like a door that you can go into, and there's a cage, and Richter from Rondo of Blood was in that cage at some point. But if you look at the cage, it just resets the whole game and begins a new custom version of Dracula's castle where you're playing as Richter with the same moveset from Rondo of Blood. So it's no longer anything really like Dead Cells. It's just one-to-one Rondo of Blood with Dead Cells aesthetic, essentially.
That's cool. See, I haven't gotten to that yet. I think I'm about to have got, because I've beaten, slight spoilers if anybody cares, but you fight Death, right? So I've beaten Death, and I've like met up, and I have Alucard at like the beginning now. So I think I'm that now. If I get to that cage, I'm right there. Okay, cool. Absolutely. So I haven't. Absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to that, where it's like traditional Castlevania gameplay. And not that I don't like the Dead Cells gameplay. Like Dead Cells gameplay is super fun. But yeah, I can't wait to do that, because that feels like they were just like, that's Motion Twin being like, just let us make a Castlevania game, please.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I feel like that's their pitch for that, right?
And it's one of those things that kind of takes a little bit, at least for me, it took a little bit of growing pains almost to remember what the control scheme was for Rondo of Blood and for the Castlevania games generally. Because Dead Cells is like, such a fast, smooth game. Your character is just zipping across the screen, dodging and ducking and rolling around. And like even the faster Castlevania games, like Symphony of the Night or something, I've never been the kind of gamer that knows how to do the like backdashing, where you see Alucard just like flying, going like moonwalking basically around. And so even in the faster games, your character's kind of lumbering. You're walking forward at kind of a ho-hum pace. And so in Dead Cells, you're flying around, and very notably, there is a double jump in Dead Cells. And in the Richter sections, there's not a double jump. There's like the first jump is a normal jump, and then the second jump makes you do like a backflip, like a stunt.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's very wild when you're fighting somebody and you just keep accidentally doing backflips. You're just backflipping all over the castle. But no, it rules. Yeah, the Richter section's awesome. And then very similarly to general games, the Dracula boss fight in Dead Cells is nightmarishly hard. It's so hard. It's a lot of fun.
But in this one, you can't just like start the level over. You got to start all the way back from the fucking beginning, right?
That is one. If there's any notes I have for Dead Cells, I mean, it's kind of against the entire game design, but you just, it can be so demoralizing when you've been doing a run, because there's also a little timer on the very bottom right of the screen that tells you how long you've been doing a run, and so it doesn't take in like pause time or anything like that. And so I'll be playing it at work, and then something happens. I put the Steam Deck down and I go do my actual job. And then I sit back down at the Steam Deck and play a little bit more. And once you get to Dracula, just demolish me, and it'll like say, okay, that run was like hour 35 minutes. And it's like, oh, okay.
Fucker. Yeah.
Like grains of sand falling through my fingers. That time is gone forever.
Oh, Lord.
Well, I want to ask, like, what we talked a little bit about the gameplay, but one thing that struck me when I watched David play it on stream was the music. is just like instantly recognizable music and stuff. Do y'all think that the music and the art is treated well in this?
Oh yeah, I mean, you could tell they're super fans, right? Like, I mean, you could tell they were super fans before they ever did this DLC, right? Like, it's clearly a love letter, right? And I think, you know, the fact that, I mean, there are like 50 Castlevania songs in this, right? And not only are there little bits where it's like, you know, the song from Dracula's Castle, you know, Bloody Tears will play or something like that, right? And you're like, okay, great. This is like the iconic Castlevania song. But then you go into these little sections that have like the little save, like dodecahedron or whatever the fucking thing is called, that from Symphony of the Night. And then, or like you go into this other area where it's like these two ghosts dancing around, and there's like no gameplay reason for that to exist other than they just wanted to put in like some nice little like fan service in for the people, right? And so stuff like that, it's like the love for the franchise is like dripping all over that game, and it's kind of a gross way to say that, but you know what I mean. It's like
it's just the juices of love.
It's just dripping love juice all over my Nintendo Switch's vents. But no, it's yeah. I mean, I think it's great. I think they nailed it. And I would like just see these guys like have a crack at a full game personally.
I mean, yeah, they've absolutely proven that they can. One thing about the music specifically that I didn't realize until like 20 hours into it is it's kind of hidden away in the settings, but generally, you know, there's themes that they have composed for every level of the game, and you can, when you go through a level, you have multiple branches. You can choose what area you'd like to go to next, and so they've made new compositions, like versions of Dracula's Castle theme and all of these big iconic Castlevania songs. So if you're just playing the DLC normally, once you get to the Castlevania parts, you'll get the new Castlevania music that they've made. But hidden away in the main menu options, you can change to Castlevania style essentially. And then
cool.
Every single area is just using rips from Game Boy Advance Castlevania games, DS Castlevania games. Like, so now every single level is just a different, you know, OST from a different game. So
that's cool. Is that in the non-Castlevania sections as well?
Yeah. Like... As soon as you start, you can go and do an entire run and you never go into the DLC stuff, but you'll just be hearing every level different Castlevania music.
Oh, that's so extra. That's so unnecessary.
So cool, right?
Yeah. I mean, music is like such an integral part of Castlevania being Castlevania, right? Like, absolutely. The themes are absolutely iconic.
Yeah, I mean, to echo your point, it's kind of, I'm personally obviously hoping for like a Mercury Steam kind of thing, like, you know,
the Metroid Dreadification of Castlevania.
Exactly, they prove that they can do it so that they get a full game, because I mean this plays like a dream, It's so
well, you know what's funny is Mercury Steam are the developers of
the Castlevania games, right?
Of Lords of Shadow, right? Like
that's right.
They made Lords of Shadow 1 and 2 and the 3DS game, which was like a side-scrolling Castlevania. That was kind of what I think Nintendo saw to be like, okay, maybe we could give them Samus Returns, right? And then they made Samus Returns. Then obviously they made Metroid Dread. I'm sure they're working on another Metroid follow-up right now. So it's like, I kind of wish that, you know, Mercury Steam could get another crack, especially after seeing what they did with Dread, because Dread was like incredible, and they really seemed to get it, you know? And I feel like with Lords of Shadow, they didn't really have an opportunity to like make a classic Igavania game like that.
Certainly.
So who do you think would be, I mean, maybe we're kind of already moving into a little bit on what we want for the future of the series, but like, who would you want? Would you want Motion Twin to be the ones taking this on, or like, you know, because obviously this is still very much a roguelike, you know, and that's kind of like what they're known for. That's their wheelhouse. Like, who do we want like bringing Castlevania back, and what do we see it coming back as in the future?
That's a good question. I definitely would rather it stay in 2D. You know, I think that's the thing with Metroid Dread, where I love Metroid Prime. I love all the Metroid Prime games. But Metroid Dread, having a modern AAA 2D Metroidvania being made by one of the big publishers, like it's just the best. It's a dream. And so to get that with Castlevania would be great. I mean, this really did scratch an itch. Absolutely. Motion Twin did such a good job. I would think, you know, they are an indie team, So maybe making an entire game. One of the cool parts about making a roguelike is you have to make like, infinitely respawning levels, but you only need like 5 or 6 different aesthetics. So they don't have to make an entire huge map with a story. Maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. The game's huge. The game's absolutely giant.
Well, they've been working on it for 6 years. Yeah. So
that's right, man.
Yeah.
This is probably the latest DLC I can think of for any big game that I've played.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. Mario Kart.
Mario
8.
Kart. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
If
that's
you want to count that, that's a 2014 game. So.
That's an interesting aspect of this, though, is that 5-6 years, whatever, after release, this comes out. Why didn't they just give them you think about Cadence of Hyrule, right? Was sort of Crypt of the Necrodancer, but it wasn't like a DLC for Crypt of the Necrodancer. It was its own little game.
Yeah,
Why wasn't this its own game? And then maybe it could have been freed for. I don't know why that decision happened, or maybe they got the license a long time ago and it took them a while to get this done, or I mean,
because I think the only game company that's more insane than Nintendo is Konami. Right?
Yeah,
Let's get real.
Absolutely.
Let's not get it twisted. That for the last 20 years, it's they've been mostly focused on pachinko machines, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's one of the, they totally screwed over Kojima. They totally screwed the pooch on the whole Metal Gear franchise. Silent Hill is only just now coming back, and even then, we don't really know what any of these games are going to be like. We're just kind of moving on. I do think though that it's if there's a trifecta of Konami franchises, it's Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, and Castlevania, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel Castlevania and Metal Gear Solid have both got to have their Silent Hill moments like they've been doing before, right? I hope that's only a matter of time. I obviously don't know anything, but it's I think that would be really great. There's been a lot of rumors that Konami's going to be at E3, which is funny because I think that rumors just came out today that Ubisoft's not even going to be at E3. I'll be there. But if that's the case, hopefully we do see some sort of Metal Gear or Castlevania representation there, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know that we're going to see them making I think they're going to do a Cadence of Hyrule, or they're going to do a Silent Hill where they find studios that are well equipped and pick them to work on these franchises.
Hear that?
Yeah.
I think as for reasons why they would have done a DLC rather than any whole standalone game, obviously this is just conjecture. I am making this up as I am talking. But Kojima, I'm pretty sure the highest grossing Castlevania game is still Lords of Shadow. Their big 3D AAA, put it on the Xbox, put it on the PlayStation kind of games. And hopefully Metroid Dread can assuage some of these fears, but I think if you're a big developer, especially a super kind of nervous, not really pumping out a ton of games developer like Konami is right now, they probably don't see a 2D side-scrolling game as the same tier as their Metal Gear Solids, as their Silent Hill 2s. So I don't know. Maybe that's why they wanted to do a DLC. They're it's a smaller project, give it to an indie team, let them goof around with the IP, so at least they're making some game. But I don't know.
Well, this to me feels like a pitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This feels like let's see how you do with this. We'll see how it's received, and then if that works, Dead Cells 2 will just be a Castlevania game. You know what I mean? And it'll be that's what I would love to see, because it's with the Silent Hill thing, we've got a Silent Hill 2 remake, we've got a new game that's kind of a weird spin-off, and then we have a wholly original thing. Right. And that's all being done by 3 different teams. Right. And so I think that what I would love to see, my ideal dream, would be a new 2D Metroid Dread style Castlevania game. That thing comes out first. Right. To reinvigorate the fan base and get all that kind of stuff done. Then you've also got a 3D entry going in. A la Metroid Dread, obviously not, I wouldn't want it to be first person whipping. That would feel kind of bad. But I think you could make a really good 3D Castlevania game, right? Of course, 3D, there's a lot of good 3D Metroidvanias at this point. Not one of which, Jedi Fallen Order kind of feels like that to me, right? A game kind of like that, I think would work really, really well with Castlevania. And then I'd love to see, just a straight up Castlevania roguelike, like Getsu Fumaden, something like that. I think it would make a ton of sense for Motion Twin to take that on. And then, if they're doing a big, here's what we're doing with Castlevania now, like that would be a great, like 1, 2, 3, like we're bringing this franchise back, like into the modern era. I think that would do really, really well. I mean, obviously I'm asking for a lot there. I would take one of those things or something else, right? But that would be my ultimate dream, I think, of what I want to see from the franchise.
Absolutely. I think in terms of like 3D Castlevania, what does that look like? I think Bloodborne is probably the closest to a game that I've played, and I've been like, this is getting very close to it. It's gothic. It's navigating 3D in a way that, you're right, I don't think first person Castlevania is the way to go, but like Bloodborne's phenomenal if they could do anything even remotely Souls-like. But what's the name of the developer that did Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze?
That's Retro Studios.
That's Retro.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
who
they're
also
busy.
did Metro Prime.
Busy.
Yeah, they're busy.
They're pretty busy.
Yeah.
So there's no dice there. I'm trying to think of more recent, like big 3D side-scrolling games aside from Metroid Dread, Donkey Kong, Dream developers. But yeah, I don't know. They Motion Twin did such a phenomenal job with this. I would happily play anything they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Castlevania player, but I think if they did make a new game, I'm with you, Garrett, that I hope that it's like a prestige 2D game. Rather than a 3D game. But when you say Bloodborne or something, I'm like, if they wanted to go all out, I guess that would be kind of cool too.
I mean, just in the meantime, if they are going to do a big announcement, just drop Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood 2-pack.
Put it on Switch.
Put it on Switch. Put it on put it on Steam. Put it on Switch. Just release it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of like a Metal Gear Solid. It's like all the 2 and 3 are like pulled from all the digital stores right now, Yeah. And so it's like, let's just bring that shit back. We're in the era now of just re-releasing old games. So let's not miss that boat, Konami, before it's too late. Put this shit out, have that tide you over until you get some of these different projects out. Then we start like a steady cadence of new Konami releases. And if these things do well, fuck it, man. You're going to make way more money than you make doing fucking pachinko. Come on.
That's right.
One more question, and then maybe we'll wrap it up. Do y'all have like attachments to specific Belmonts if they do make a new Castlevania game? Who do you want as the protagonist?
It's a good question. I think personally, Richter in aesthetic alone. I mean, most of the Castlevania games are, it's vaguely medieval times. It's like the 1400s, the 1600s. Like, it's maybe not medieval. Maybe I don't even know what the era would even be. Richter's
from like 1790s or
exactly
like French Revolution, right? Yeah.
French Revolution. But then in the game Rondo of Blood, it's the 80s for some reason. It's like at the same time, like French aristocracy, and also like he's wearing like his sleeves are cut off. He's got one of those Karate Kid headbands. Electric guitar riffs are playing as he's like punching a skeleton's head into pieces. So the open, if you don't even want to play Rondo of Blood, I definitely recommend look up the intro to Rondo of Oh, it rips, man. It is. He's just like an 80s action hero with a like chain metal whip. So Richter is definitely my favorite Belmont aesthetic wise.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Richter's era right now. You know what I mean? Like Richter is going to be the star of Castlevania Nocturne. He's a big part of the Dead Cells DLC. He's a playable character in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. You know, like definitely, like I feel like they're leaning into that timeline of Belmont, right? Like around like the late 1700s, early 1800s era of Belmont, right? But for me, if they're doing another Castlevania game, I don't want to play as any of the Belmonts. I think one of the best things about I want to play as a Belmont, but I don't want to play as any of the like established characters. Like I think one of the best and coolest things about the Castlevania games is every game is in a different time period and it's always a different member of the lineage of Belmonts, right? So give me a new Belmont, you know, have it set in some era where
modern
we don't
era.
have a game yet. Yeah. I mean, though they've done that. I mean, they had what is it? Aria of Sorrow is like set in the future. It's like like the 2100s, like in Japan or something like that. Right. So it's like, you could set it whenever, right? I mean, you can have it whenever in history, wherever there's a hole for a Belmont. Like let's have that be where we put a Belmont in and expand the story a little bit. Even though the lore doesn't really matter in these games, you know what I mean? Like the connective tissue, it's fun to look at that lineage and the lore. And I'm saying this just for Matt, but it's like, you know, it's nice to have a place where you could slot it in and have it be officially part of the canon, right? And so I'd love to have a new Belmont to play as, but just keep it a Belmont. I don't want any of these fucking games where I'm playing as some other random guy.
That's right. I think an interesting thing that they'll have to navigate in the future if they ever do make more 2D Castlevania games is with the Sorrow games, with Aria and Dawn of Sorrow, they've written themselves into a little bit of a funny narrative point, because I think in like 1999, Dracula was like dead, capital D, like killed, completely killed, reincarnated as a teenage Japanese boy.
Yeah.
And like, so those games are very successful. Those games are like beloved. People love it, but it kind of has like
some of the
hard
best ones,
timestamp on like how long you get Dracula. You get Dracula like vague medieval times until like 1999, baby. And you got to just pick any time.
Now, let's see the Flower Child generate. Let's see like the Summer of Love 1960s Belmont. That's what I want to see.
That's good. I like that. I like that.
Well, as we wrap this up, any other thoughts about, you know, Castlevania as a series, or Dead Cells in Castlevania, or future of Castlevania, or something? Closing thoughts? It's so good. I happily put in, you know, hours and hours of runs where I'm like, I sometimes my girlfriend will be sitting next to me while I'll be playing a run of this DLC, and I'll get up to Dracula, and she's noticed that the way that I talk about the boss fights now is I'm like, hey man, you know, it's the journey. It's not the destination. You know, we're getting up here. If Dracula kills me, that's okay. His animations are really cool. Like I have to like talk myself into being okay with just seeing that little timestamp of 1:35. Just
flush down the toilet. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely, I mean, if nothing else, this DLC has reinvigorated my love for Dead Cells. You know what I mean? Like I'm really glad this came out just to reintroduce me to this game again, because it really is so much fun. Now I'm doing runs again before I go to bed at night. You know, like after the stream I did the other day, it was like, man, I just kind of want to, now I'm like kind of like addicted to it. I want to keep going. And so it's nice. And I haven't played a roguelike in a while. You know, I've been playing too many fucking Picross games. So it's like nice to have this back in my life. And yeah, as far as the Castlevania as a franchise goes, I mean, I think it's obviously time. You know, the new show's coming out, and again, I don't have any information about what Konami is doing, right? But it's like, you know, it just seems like between this and Smash and the show and everything, it feels like the zeitgeist is really setting itself up for a big return for this franchise, and I really hope it does. And I hope they can get Iga back on board, man. Hopefully his studio is one of the studios that Konami just gives a Castlevania game to, and they're like, here, just do it. You know, same with Metal Gear. Like, I hope they're just like, all right, could you give me productions? You're not officially a part of Konami anymore, but we are our outsourcing partner for a new Metal Gear game. You know what I mean? However they want to fucking spin it, as long as we get new games in the franchise, that's all I really want.
I mean, we could always hope that they're going to do like a Square Enix thing and like bet on NFTs and just sell the IPs to Nintendo or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Castlevania NFTs. You heard it here first.
Oh. All right. Well, I think that does it for our discussion about Castlevania and Return to Castlevania and Dead Cells. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the games we've been playing recently. All right, so I've been mostly playing Splatoon 3 Salmon Run. I did it, y'all. I got to Executive VP, the highest rank in Salmon Run, and I held on to it.
So wait, Vice President is the highest you can get?
Egg, like an egg pun. Executive VP. That's what it is. It's the highest rank. And if you keep getting up, like, which I found out, your number just increases.
Right.
So at first it looks like there's going to be another rank because it's like out of 99, and then you get past 99 and it's just 100 and something. So man, I was just on a fucking roll in Salmon Run. Like I went, like my wife, who does not care, I went and I'm like, I am killing it in Splatoon. You're like, baby, look what I did. I know.
Baby, look what I did.
And she's like, who am I married to? But like, I had nobody else to share it with in that moment. Great job, hun.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you, son.
So, man, that felt really good. The current rotation did knock me back down to +3. It's pretty brutal, but man, yeah, that's really it. I got so hooked on it, especially once that happened. So yeah, that's all I've been really playing.
The sky is blue, water is wet. Patrick is playing Splatoon as the game has been playing this week. All is right in the world. I'll go next. I've kind of been playing a ton recently. I've been kind of busy with a lot of other stuff in my life for the past couple of weeks, and then that has kind of not been happening this past week. So I've just been like playing a bunch of games, and, like catching back up. Obviously, I've been playing a lot of Dead Cells again now that the DLC is out. I also have to give a shout out to Tetris 99. There was a Fire Emblem Engage Maximus Cup. Played 2 rounds of that and got the theme and moved on to all these other games that I've been playing recently. A little bit of Splatoon, obviously. I'm very excited for the Splatfest this week. I want to give a shout out to DCD. He and I played some online Tetris the other day. We played Tetris Effect online together, which was just like modern Tetris. And then we played Game Boy Tetris after that online on Nintendo Switch Online, both of which are super fun to play online and both really competitive in different ways. And it was great. We did the same thing that I did with AVK, where it's like, a match of 3 sets of 4 games each, kind of like tennis, you know what I mean? And it's really, really fun on Game Boy Tetris. I still really recommend people playing that if you have a chance. And then, I've just been buying a shit ton of 3DS games.
Look at that.
I bought a lot. Yeah. I can't really go through all of them because I've been, like I said, on some kind of weird spending spree. But some ones I really wanted to shout out that were really great. And I know now the store is closed, so take this with a grain of salt, or maybe just write these down for whenever you decide to hack your 3DS. Pocket Card Jockey I picked up. That's an amazing game. It's a Game Freak game that's like horse racing solitaire. And it's just as silly as it sounds and very fucking addicting. What else have I been playing? I played a game called Aura Aura Climber, which was like a DSi game where it's like very simple, kind of almost like doodle jump style game where you're just going up and up and up and up and you're like grabbing onto these little nodes. I bought a lot of like DSiWare games just because I find that kind of stuff like pretty interesting. This wonderful game for 3DS, which is a 3DS digital exclusive that I got, called Kersploosh. That game is super fun. You play a rock. You play as a rock that's been thrown down a well. And so like the whole game, you're kind of like, the well is like coming at you as you're like going down it. And there's all these like obstacles that you have to like kind of slowly like tilt around to not hit so you can hit the water at the bottom of the well. And then on the 3DS, it's awesome because it's got the 3D effect and everything's just like flying past you. And that was like a super cheap, like silly little game that I'm like really, really enjoying. So I really like Kersploosh. That's definitely one I picked up. The Mysterious Murasami Castle was an NES game that was never released here in the US. That's on the virtual console of the 3DS, so I picked that up because it's not available anywhere else. And it's the game. It was built on the Zelda engine. I think it came out either just before or just after Zelda, but it plays a lot like the original NES Zelda, but it's kind of its own thing and this kind of ancient Japan aesthetic. It is the Getsu Fumiden to Castlevania of Murasami Castle to Zelda.
I recognize it from Mario Maker.
Yep. Yeah. Mario Maker has some of that in there. I think also Smash has some Murasami Castle stuff in it as well. So that's pretty cool. But the game I think I really most want to shout out, and there are more, but that's all I'm going to say. That I don't want to just talk about 3DS games forever, is Picross 3D. I finally picked up Picross 3D. I never played it before. Picross 3D Round 2 is on the 3DS. Just an excellent game. It's like I know Picross inside and out, and I know like how to do all the puzzles, and I'm really addicted to that style of gameplay. But doing it in 3D, where you're like chiseling off a thing and making a shape, is so fucking satisfying. And out of everything, that's what I've been like most addicted to. Out of my like spending spree on the 3DS. So there's also a Picross 3D for the DS as well. Both of those are awesome games. And I think that there's a game called Voxelgram for the Switch, which is kind of like a spiritual successor to Picross 3D. If that kind of gameplay interests you, you could pick up Voxelgram on the Switch. But that's what I've been playing recently. And what about you, Garrett? What about you? What have you been playing other than Dead Cells?
Yeah, a whole ton of Dead Cells. Aside from that, the main game I've been playing is Resident Evil 4, the new one. And what a game. What a game,
The
baby.
remake is good?
It's so good. It absolutely rules. I made the choice / possible mistake that I make with all of the modern Resident Evil games, where whenever I start the game, I get my ego kind of a little bit too close whenever I'm choosing the difficulty. So the difficulty will be like, do you want to be like easy, like you're a little baby, like you're a little dumb little baby, can't play games? Or do you want to do hardcore, where like, you're just like a normal guy. I want to play hardcore nightmare mode.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking like, well, I'm a normal guy, so I guess I'll play hardcore. And then the game is just remarkably difficult the entire time. And I'm like, oh, if only it was different.
Right.
And my ego. So I've been replaying a ton of levels of that game, and not, against my own will, because you just get killed at the very end. But love Resident Evil 4. Also, I guess the gift / curse of the Steam Deck is that you can go into desktop mode and mess around and download emulators and stuff. And playing Dead Cells, obviously, I wanted to scratch my Castlevania itch. And so I just did that thing that I do sometimes where I like playing games, but I also like having the option to play games that I'll never touch.
Yes.
And so I'll just go into the Steam Deck emulators, and I just downloaded like so many Castlevania games. Like I said, played all the way through Super Castlevania 4, had a great time, but also played Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, which is one of the DS games. Really got into that. Had a whole bunch of fun, but it's also, it's so much choice that you're drowning in it. Like instead of, I can't control myself. Instead of just emulating one game I'd like to play, I am just going to emulate, or I'll just download the ROMs for like 10 games and make sure all of them are at least functional, and then I don't have to touch them again. I was in a cycle of that a little bit this past week.
Yeah. If you're going to do any of the old school Castlevania games on the Steam Deck, I would really recommend downloading a ROM hack of Harmony of Dissonance, the Game Boy Advance game. That's in the Advance collection on the Switch. But famously, the original, like, what is it? Circle of the Moon, when it came out, like nowadays it looks beautiful on like an HD screen, with like an OLED screen and everything. But back in the day, it was like a launch title for the Game Boy Advance, and it was not backlit. And everybody was like, this is way too dark. I can't see what the fuck I'm doing. Right. So with Harmony of Dissonance, they kind of like overcompensated for that. They made the game really bright, and they added like a blue like outline to your character the whole time when you play as Juice Belmont. And it's like they added an outline to him, and it's really ugly on like modern screens. It's totally playable. It's still an amazing game. But there are like ROM hacks that like darken the game a little bit slightly, and they remove like the border around your character. So I have that on my Steam Deck. So like I'm playing all the Game Boy Advance games on my Switch except for that one, which I'm playing on the Steam Deck. So I would recommend that. There's a lot of really good Castlevania hacks.
Absolutely. Should definitely check that out. But yeah, aside from that, it's mostly Resident Evil 4 and Dead Cells. I, for a minute, tried playing Dark Souls 2 because I was playing Dead Cells, and I was like, this roguelike, this like, playing a little bit and then dying and then starting over. It's gotten me kind of itching for a Dark Souls-y game. And I started playing Dark Souls 2 and quickly realized that I'm just not in the headspace right now. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's a Dark Souls game. And so I played the game and enjoyed it for what it was, but just got frustrated like no other. Like I kept comparing Dead Cells to Dark Souls in my brain because it's a similar kind of, feeling. It's not even close. Dark Souls 2, there were parts where I wanted to break the controller. I was so mad. I was like, how dare you? But,
I'm planning on starting at some point soon. Finally starting Elden Ring. I did buy it on Steam.
So
maybe we should do that too. Oh, you've already played it?
Yeah, I've already played it, but I'm happy to play more.
I'm the only one who's never played it, but
it's okay.
I'll do it at some point.
Famous last words.
Well, I think that does it then for this episode on the Castlevania franchise and the Dead Cells crossover. Thank you so much, Garrett, for coming on and talking to us. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be on. I'm a big fan. Happy to be here talking to you guys.
Thank you very much. We'll be sure to have you on again soon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thanks to milkyway.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our awesome music. If you're looking for me, Patrick, online, you can find me most places as PDYX.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Garrett? Where can people find you online?
I'm at Garrett Buss is my name on Instagram and anywhere you can find me.
Awesome. Very good. Make sure you shoot Garrett a follow. And if you'd like to find our show on social media, folks, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We got a website, switchheadz.com. And we got our Discord and our Facebook group. We'll have links to both of those in the description of the show. Join up on the Discord. We've been getting a lot of new members on the Discord recently, which has been really, really nice. A lot of new people playing games. With a lot of Mario Party online, a lot of Splatoon online, a lot of people joining in and playing and just joining into the conversation. So be sure to join us on the Discord as well. But with that, that's going to do it for this episode. We love Castlevania. It was really fun to talk about the franchise with you. And we're going to be back next week with an all brand new episode of the show. Can't wait for that. We'll be talking at least a little bit about that Zelda Direct. I don't know if are we going to squeeze a whole episode out of that, Patrick?
We'll have to see what it is.
We'll see tomorrow if we're going to squeeze a whole episode out of that. We'll see. But either way, gang, make sure you tune in. It's going to be a good one. And then also next week is the Mario movie, right? So there's lots of cool Nintendo stuff coming up.
Time.
Yep, it's going to be insane. So make sure you tune in. We're going to be having lots of stuff to say about the future of Nintendo. We love you guys. You know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Make sure you watch Castlevania Nocturne on repeat on Netflix whenever that thing comes out. And otherwise, we love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.